Mm. Thank you for joining us tonight for Live Bees. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Palawa people as the traditional and continuing custodians of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We honour their history and deep connection to this land and its waters, which were never ceded, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to welcome Kevin Tracy tonight. So Kevin is joining us. All the way, I'm not actually sure where you are at the moment, Kevin. New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland. You're somewhere in Australia, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Kevin
to.
is, where are you?
I'm on the Gold Coast, Kira Beach.
Great. Great. Well, welcome. So
Thank you.
Kevin is a beekeeper, a bee educator, and he was the former lead trainer at Tokel College in New South Wales. Kevin now teaches all over Australia, and we are fortunate to be tapping into his knowledge tonight as he does a
Oh,
presentation for us about bee nutrition. And it was really lovely to hear from you, Kevin, and to, um, you know, have you eager to contribute to Live Bees and share your knowledge with our community here in Tasmania and other parts of the world that may be joining us tonight. So,
thank you so
Kevin,
much.
we are having issues with the camera setup as we've spoken about, but
Yes.
we get to hear your voice. So, Kevin, I might start before you start your presentation. Could you give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into beekeeping?
Oh, look, it was one of those foolhardy things, as most people will be shaking their heads saying, "Yeah, I hear that," because we were living a very rural, shall we say, existence, very off grid. And I just decided one day, hey, bees would be pretty cool, wouldn't they? And from there, we got a couple beehives, which I knew nothing about, and I paid the price for my ignorance. I can tell you that right now, with stings that lasted, I couldn't tell you how long. 3 days, I think I was comatose. So that was the first thing, and that was in 1974. And I'm not going to say any more about that because we stopped for a while and I returned maybe 12, 15 years ago in a pretty big way. So that's it.
Yeah.
And it was honey and pollination. That's why we get bees.
Exactly. Kevin, there was a few topics we could have chosen to speak about tonight. I know that you had planned a trip to Tasmania last year to talk about
Yes.
queen raising. We won't dwell on that. We're
Thank
just
you.
glad that you have your vision. But tonight's topic is all about bee nutrition, and I'm hoping that you can lead out the discussion, perhaps by starting talking about why bee nutrition is so important, and perhaps why beekeepers don't really think about it until they have to.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I think most people think that they're just a nice pet, but it's one of the benefits of having bees like that is because you can, what do you say? They look after themselves. I think a lot of people think, yes, that's good. I don't have to do anything if I have bees, and that's not true at all. I know years ago when I was talking to people about um, bee nutrition, that people would say, no, my bees look after themselves. My bees look after themselves. And that's most unfortunate because, as you know, and probably Tassie would be one of the crazy places. I've just come back from the Northern Territory as well. And there's some tough times, weather wise and dearth and, unpredictability, though we're all in fairly unpredictable mode these days. So, yeah, that's people just don't know, and they don't want to know because it says a couple of extra dollars, thank you, to look after your bees. And the songs with beekeeping are always things like, I need more gear, I need more gear. And the other one is the shed always needs, it's never big enough. So there we are. That's why people don't do it. And they then comes in that just sheer ignorance of how do I do that? What do I do it with? Do I just dump sugar on a tabletop or, and where I run into trouble with people with presenting the whole topic of supplemental feeding of bees. People don't hear the word supplemental, right? Or to keep your bees alive. They hear farm lot feeding, and that's not what we talk about at all. So that's a misconception. My bees don't need to be fed, and if I start feeding them, then they're going to be dependent on that, and that's not true. So that's it.
And can you tell us, I
What
know
else
we've
can
got
I
some
say,
new,
Jenny?
well, just before we start the presentation, you just mentioned there that people worry about bees relying on being fed. I know we've got some new beekeepers in the room with us at the moment, and I'm wondering if you can tell us why it is that bees don't become reliant on supplemental feeding.
They're preferential feeders.
Mm.
I think we think about individual bees, all right? We don't think about the fact that the colony is the animal. And this colony has developed over quite some time, this animal, and it's got itself pretty well sorted out. So when we manage bees, we actually think we're smarter than the bees, and that's not true. So in the sense of their nutritional needs, etc., they will go to a tree before they'll go to a feeder if the food in the tree is better. All right. So when I supplemental feed, um, I put some out. If they don't take it, it's pointless me putting it out. Does that make sense? Because the bees will,
Yeah.
whether it's a sugar syrup or sugar powder or a pollen or a pollen supplement or substitute, and I hope all these words will become a bit more defined as we go, but the bees won't take it if they don't want it or need it. They'll go to the trees, the flowers, even the weeds before a feed if they're getting their nutritional value.
Mm.
That's how good they are. And there's bees are efficient. All right. We talk about bees being busy. They're not busy. They're efficient. So we need to, we need to rethink what bees are, and it's a single animal per colony. Doesn't hurt so much when you lose one then either. A bee. I don't want to get anybody crying. I don't deliberately crush any bees.
No, no, no. But I think it's an important topic to raise because people do see an individual bee, but the bee is part of a bigger organism, which is the
Oh,
colony.
yes.
And it's
Yes.
very important that we look after the colony as bee custodians.
Well
And
said.
well, yeah, so I think that's an important aspect. And on that topic, I noticed on your slide here, Kevin, you've got a fat bee and a skinny bee. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that?
Oh, happy to tell you about that. And you're going to see them coming up in one way or another throughout, because that's coming from Doug Somerville's book, Fat Bees, Skinny Bees. And it's the most obvious way, though it's politically incorrect. I don't know if you're aware that they actually changed the cover because it was
Oh,
politically incorrect to say fat bees, skinny bees. So if anybody there is offended by this, I got to tell you, I don't care, because I'm not setting out to offend anybody, and you'll know when I am. So pet bees are healthy bees, and healthy bees are more productive. They're calmer. You know what I mean? We've got when it's in good shape, as in the fat bee, it's showing that it's got the protein, the nutritional needs it needs, but it also shows the skinny bee, which can still function, but very poorly. And I would, it's not, I don't think it's even an assumption that every one of the people that is watching this is concerned about the health of their bees. If they're not, they will be by the end. How are your bees, Jenny?
well, it's a very good question. We had an American foul brood outbreak down here in Tasmania, a lot of
Oh,
notifications across the state, which I think set a lot of beekeepers into panic. So I have not opened my beehives midwinter. I haven't. I just won't do it.
No.
In terms of food, they're feeling, I've hefted my hives, so they're feeling okay.
Good.
But give it another 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be cracking the lids and having a little peek in the top just to see. Although by the end of this presentation, I may decide to go out tomorrow and check every single hive. I'm not sure yet, Kevin. So
Not if you're going to find foul brood. You don't want no. Don't do that. I
yeah,
shouldn't say
no,
no. Oh no, get out there and burn them. I've had done my part.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so my mind might be changed after you've given us your presentation.
Yeah. Well, the thing with foul brood, I'll just say this, and I've actually done what you have to say is counseling of people when they discover American foul brood. Firstly, I have to say it's not an American disease because the accent sort of people think maybe I
What's your
brought it.
fault, Kevin? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's your
yeah,
fault.
that's yeah. And but I say to people, it really breaks the heart. It's really, really hard to kill a bee colony, let alone many colonies. Um, but if it breaks the heart, don't let it break your will. Get back into it. Keep going. It's one of those things that happens, and if it's managed, then we move on. That's the key.
And I think the difficulty for us in Tasmania when we were sent the notification, it would have been at a time that potentially there was no to little brood in anybody's hive. So
No, yeah,
checking your hives at that point, opening up the hive midwinter and checking your
nah,
hive for American foul brood, kind of pointless.
yeah. And
So
isn't
yes.
there's a bit of antibiotic in Tasmania, isn't there?
Yeah, it's quite
I hope
contentious.
nobody. Yeah, I
They
know.
use it. They use it. So it's quite
Yeah,
contentious. We've got the only foul brood management code of practice that allows beekeepers to use antibiotic.
for American foul
Yeah,
brood.
yeah, yeah. Coupled with
Okay.
other practices. Have a look. Look it up. I'll send you an email, Kevin, with all the
Oh, gee,
details about
thanks.
it.
Yeah.
And you can have a look. And I believe that was negotiated a number of years ago.
Hmm.
Um, so Tasmania seems to be a special case, although I've not yet had American foul brood in my hives, so I can't,
Yeah. Well,
speak.
yeah. Anything I've
Yeah.
I've learned about. Oh, I'm off topic. I'm it's I'm not going to say anymore.
Okay. We'll have another conversation, Kevin.
Yes, yes,
Yep.
we'll do
Great.
that, but I wouldn't
Okay.
use it. All right,
Hmm. So,
done.
all right. Back to honeybee nutrition. So,
All
Kevin, I'll let
right.
you start your slideshow, and there'll be time for questions at the end. So, everyone, get your notepads out and start writing down your questions for Kevin because we'll have time for Q&A. So, over to
Okay,
you.
cool. All right, now here we go. And the thing I want to say is I have jam-packed these slides with a fair bit of info. Some I'll go through quickly, some I'll go because you're recording this, Jenny. People
Yep.
can see it again and review or pick up on things because one of the things the hardest thing for beekeepers when they're new especially is information overload, or in a topic that you're not familiar with, information overload. And that's what I'm going to do. All right. And this is introductory stuff. So hang on. Here we go. We have a time limit. I'm going to keep this voice because I don't do German and my Spanish is terrible except for La Nina, El Nino. We can touch on that, but vamonos. Okay, there it is. Honeybee nutrition, WTF. And that's just to help you remember every single time you say WTF that it's when to feed your bees. All right. And here we go. So next is that one. All right. We have the pillars of beekeeping, so-called. All right. And these again were Doug Somerville in his book, Fat Bees, Skinny Bees. And I've got a lot of respect for Doug and what he does, has done, and continues to do. The reason for the illustration on the right there is that shows healthy brood. All right. And this is, for me, what we always need to be focusing on is what's good, proper, and healthy, because then we see the aberrations, okay? So there's basically 4 pillars of beekeeping under which everything comes. There's nutrition, requeening, please note, as necessary, comb rotation, which I'm really big on, and pest disease management. All right, so that's our background. Base for honeybees. They collect water. That's the priority. Okay, they need water for their health, well-being, the temperature control in the hive, the humidity in the colony. They need pollen and collect pollen. They collect propolis, which I'm going to give a slide for you to go to another source and find out more about that, because this is really important stuff. I even saw a Facebook post saying, oh, there's money in propolis. And me being me, couldn't help but comment and say, the money that you get from propolis is nowhere near the value that it has for the bees to be in the beehive. So have a look later on. I'll give you a link. And they collect nectar. Note that pollen and propolis are carried in the corbiculae, which are the corbicula, which is the pollen basket. All right. And I was so tempted to go into anatomy here, because this is fascinating stuff. The tongue of the bee for nectar and water is a fascinating instrument, if you can say. So where they collect is in proportion to the need of the colony. All right, and this is where bees are efficient. I'm trying to keep on topic and not go aside and this and that. But if they don't need food, they won't go out and get it. Right? They'll stop bees coming back, because bees do trophallaxis. So if bees come back to dump some honey into another bee, the collector bees will slow down their uptake and just have this congestion, because they go, we don't need all of this. And likewise, pollen will end up being stored, etc., and not used. Where I really want to head with our purposes here is that, I don't know, does that arrow show?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Okay, well, here, poor nutrition leads to an increase in stress of the bee colony. And stress creates situations for the bees that leads to poor performance or even non-performance. And I'm telling you, we're going to learn a bit about how bad poor nutrition can be for bees as we move along. All right, these are bees doing their thing with their tongues and with their corbicula. That's just some bees near some water having a drink out of a, what was it? That was a hot spring in Catherine, if I recollect. So that was they prefer cleaner water, but they will go to the mud. And it's believed that that's because of nutritional value, minerals, etc., in that food. Okay. This gives a couple of nightmare equations, but firstly, for our basics and understanding, nectar is the primary source of energy. All right, this gives them the get up and go, the fuel in the tank, if you will. And this is why when people start saying about how far does a bee fly, well, there's a huge trade-off for the bee. The further they go, the more of their fuel they consume to get fuel to go back to store. So you can see it can be a trade-off of a zero value if they're going too far. And pollen, most simply put, is the protein. And you can see here, I've mentioned that crude protein, if it's too low, is insufficient. All right, the best crude protein is 25% plus. Many supplement feeds that you get are well above that. But I'll say again later that supplements aren't all the same. all right, because of the materials that are used in them, and as I've spoken with my friend Madeline Kratz, DPI New South Wales, some of them, the bees don't digest it as well, so the protein may be there, but it's not accessed by the bee. Where are we here? Oh, okay, so there's two equations on here. The good protein means more brood, bee longevity, and less stress, so better performance all around. And if we could have bees living longer than 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you will have more bees in your colony that are working and taking on the jobs necessary. Am I making any sense, Jenny? Because you're the only person I
Yes.
can see. And if you start to
Yes.
yawn, I'm done. All right.
No, I'm making
Now,
notes. See, I've got a pen and paper. Yeah, yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So the nutritional current, people always think that if they've got cranky bees, it's because of the bees themselves or a bad queen or the way they're hungry bees are cranky bees. Okay, so that might be a very good reason why your bees are attacking you, is they're trying to defend every last bit of food resource in the honey area that they can. All right, so that's again a fact that we need to look at nutritionally. And here's the one I'm going to focus on pollen throughout, is the colony will decline, all right, rapidly. They need the protein, that's the fat bodies, that's the telogenin issues, it's imperative that they're well fed with the protein, which I've got a breakdown later on of more of what's within that as its source of food. But please take note of that final dreaded red equation there. Limited pollen means less brood. If there's less brood, you've got a reduced colony, lowered production, increased stress, reduced health, open to pests and diseases, and all right, skull and crossbones. So I'm not saying any of this to scare or shock anybody. This is just a reality check, friends. Just quickly, so I'm just, because I've got more important things, know that seasons affect the brood, food, pests, and diseases. So there's a couple there. They vary with seasonal changes. You probably don't have much problem with small hive beetle, all right, but you probably have some problems with no semen. Those sorts of issues can be related to the season as well as the food source, the substantial food source. I've got here, you can see, I've got some La Nina stuff and some El Nino. And you know, El Nino, he's going to be around sooner or later. I did my research on the weather patterns, and it reminded me of a country hour show I heard on ABC radio a couple of weeks ago, where they had this huge Bureau of Meteorology report from the meteorologist, and the host of the show said, okay, so that's the weather, a bit of alchemy and some guesswork, and we take what we get. And there we are. As I read about El Nino and El Nino, they kept doing these. Well, of course, it could be more, it could be less, it could be bad, it could be worse, it could be longer, it could be shorter. So good luck as those influences come around. But I wanted to just put this up so that you get the picture, okay? The availability of nutrition will impact on the queen's condition, right? If there's no health in that colony, she will reduce her laying, okay? So you'll lose your colony strength, not only in numbers, but in their weight, all right? Their physical weight and strength. The drone population is, I won't say entirely dependent on nutrition, but if you want drones, you better have a very healthy nutrition-based colony, because that affects their performance in those areas where they need to be performing. And if you want to know more about that, I will do a queen course for you. But right now, we're not talking about drones. And of course, the influence on pests and diseases need to, I should have put a picture in. Pests and diseases, especially when things like nosema are quite well linked to nutrition. And autumn and spring are the times of the greatest needs for a colony nutritionally. Okay, let's talk a little bit about sugar, all right, as a supplement for nectar. There's no nectar in the trees. We know they don't collect honey, all right, but if you have lots of rain, any nectar that might be in the tree could be washed out. Trees might not necessarily be producing much nectar simply because it's so dry. There's any number of things, and I don't know from where people have come to be here tonight. There may be only a few people, and they're all Taswegians, or there may be some New South Welshmen. I don't know, but you need to realize you need to be aware of the conditions where you are. I can talk general principles, give guidelines, etc., but I can't say specifically where your bees are, and that even goes regionally. Okay, the only thing I can say is, if you're going to ask me what my favorite honey is at any time, I will say leatherwood, because I'm thinking there's a lot more Tasmanians there than there are anybody else. Okay, that's second to my honey, of course. Now, sugar syrup. All right. There are different ratios in different ways. All right. How you feed it is as they need it. So if you do something like with that photo, the external feeder, you can watch how much they're taking. If they're not taking sugar syrup, don't give it to them. They don't want it. All right. So we've got two different lines of thinking, if you will. We've got the ratio of 1-to-1, that's sugar to water, and that'll stimulate a colony into action. We use that a lot in queen rearing, a lot. Or if you do package bees, you throw that on because it helps them produce wax. It's a stimulant. It will stimulate. If you have chalk brood problems in the first place, give them a dose of 1-to-1 sugar syrup, and it gets them into a cleaning behavior. All right, they're cleaning cells for the queen to lay. She sees, oh, this is happening. It kind of simulates a nectar flow, all right, and gets the bees active. However, if you're feeding your bees to keep them alive, there's no food for eating, you bump up the ratio, all right, which is up to 2-to-1. Now, I don't want to say obviously, but I want to make very clear that these ratios are not exact, all right? Because I've had people stand up in classrooms and say, you know that 1 kilo of sugar is not equal to 1 kilo of, and you just go, all right. These are simple, and they're a way to help people just go a simple formula that works. For me, if I'm feeding sugar syrup in summer, here up in Queensland and that, I make it a much lighter mixture. I put a lot more water in so that they don't stop taking in the syrup to go and get water. I hope that kind of makes sense there. So I lighten it. And if you make it too heavy, then it takes them longer to process that. All right. So just, that's why this is all on here. You can look at it later. Okay, everyone, forgive me. It's hard to know how little to actually present. But if you think for a second here, bees should be fed 5 to 10 liters weekly when they're hungry. All right. Now, that's a lot. And I love listening to commercial beekeepers who have scales on their hives saying they're bringing in more than 1 kilo a day of honey, as it were, nectar. So we're not talking necessarily small amounts. And I respect that people here on this Zoom are more than likely not large numbers of colonies. It's okay. You just give them what they need and then stop. All right. A note as well with the feeding, please note in colder climates, use dry sugar because it can be too cold for them to drink. And I'm talking before it's frozen. All right. They don't want icy pole sugar pops. So give dry sugar. And the key here is only white processed sugar. Thank you. All right. That's it. And not honey. That's a huge biosecurity risk, feeding honey. Will I stop any questions right here and now just so we don't lose thinking? No?
Any questions? Any questions from anyone?
Okay,
Nope.
we'll keep going.
Keep going.
Oh,
Yep.
all right. Okay, this is quickly on the propolis, and I put that Marla Spivak. It's a YouTube that is well worth watching. I can't encourage you enough to get a grip on how important propolis is. And I know that there was at least one queen breeder in the world who worked very hard to get her carniolan bees to stop producing so much propolis because it can be a real nuisance in a hive. But then as it became more evident scientifically, and the research was saying more and more how important propolis is as a antimicrobial agent. It's basically the chemist shop for the bees right at hand. They put those abilities back into the bee for collecting propolis. Have a look at that. There's all kinds of ideas. When I first heard this, I contacted a manufacturer, equipment supply manufacturer of boxes. And I said, this could be pretty revolutionary and wouldn't take much to cut some grooves in boxes for them to fill with propolis. But you know how it is sometimes.
Yeah, well, there was actually an article on Landline yesterday for anybody interested, all about propolis. And it's about a beekeeper in Queensland who is investing in research around collecting propolis. It was very interesting if anyone wants to go back and watch it.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's why I say that I think it was that particular one where they're saying there's money in it. And I say, yeah, there could be, but first the bees. Thanks. There's money in honey too, but the bees need it more than we do. And there's money in pollen, but the bees need it more than we do. So being careful in our balance and not getting greedy. Okay, so I'll stop there. Oh, except if you look at that, the bee on the left, that is one mighty old bee out there working away. And I mean, I'm glad I'm not on screen because I'm going to mention that. Where is she? She's bald.
Yeah.
She's right at the end, and you can see the tattered wings there. That's an old girl. Thank you very much, darling, for doing that for us. Okay, now the focus more on pollen. All right, and there's going to be quite a few visuals, etc., etc. We've talked about the protein, the crude protein they need. If they can't source it, you can do this for them. And there's open feeding or pollen patties. Now, a lot of people shriek about open feeding of bees. What do you think this is? Again, I think I've heard quite a few of the rants and raves around it. And I was asked once very directly, you shouldn't open feed. There's got to be a better way. And I said, yes, in the flowers, in the trees, right? That was it. And there's no comeback to that. They're open feeding all of the time. But as I say, we don't farm lot feed. We simply supplemental feed. So the cells that you can see there, there's pollen. Some people can't identify it. They sometimes think that it's chalk brood. It is not. It is pollen. The colored ones are pollen. And you'll see more in photos later. Where am I? You can see the jelly around the bee, the larva, I should say. We'll emphasize this later because I do have a picture of starving larvae for your comparison. You can sound a bit more excited than that.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. I think everybody else is on mute and I'm just, just observing and making notes. It's good.
Okay, this is just a bit of fun, but again, note the royal jelly, well, the worker jelly in this instance. Sorry about the background photo. I mean, historical photo. But they need it. They work better being healthy. That's it. So plant your nose in it, bee, and get it into you. Here's a pollen frame. And some people say, but how do I know if I need to supplemental feed? How do I know if they're getting enough pollen naturally, etc.? Well, this is what you look at on a pollen frame, and it all looks pretty much the same. Okay, but what we're looking at the entrance of the hive is for bees to be coming in their pollen baskets. We'll use that language. 3 different colors is a pretty good indicator that you're getting a good balance. You're getting the protein, the nutritional requirements of the bees, okay? And this shows a cross section, because bees with pollen, unlike when they're delivering nectar, the nectar goes prophylaxis, mouth to mouth, and it's reduced in more enzymes, and then goes into the cell from a bee that has taken it to that cell, not the original supplier. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Good.
Well,
yeah. I just want to bring Deb back in so she can hear that. All right, Deb, I'm making sense. Okay. So the bee, when it's delivering pollen, the bee that brings it back goes straight to the cell and drops it off the pollen basket, scrapes it in, and then packs it down with her head. All right, so you'll have different layers of pollen, which may be different colors. So just the top layer, as you can see there, you can't tell the variety. So watch your bees at the entrance. If they're bringing in 3 types, and that there'll be color variations, as we can see, don't worry so much about any supplemental feeding. All right, because I'm an advocate of supplemental feeding, but I'm not a pusher. All right, I'm not saying if you're not doing it, you're missing out, but if you're not doing it, it needs to be done, your bees are missing it, and you'll wonder what's going on. Okay, moving along, there they are again. Healthy bees on that. Here again, you can do this just when you're looking at your bees. All right, everyone who's here who has bees, just pick up a brood frame and look at it. And does it look like they're swimming in jelly, or does it look like they're dry as, what's the saying? Dry as chips. All right.
I thought you were going to say something else for a minute there, and I'm glad you didn't.
No, come on. You mean dry as a, no, I'm not. No. I'll let you.
Good.
All right.
No.
What were you going to say, Jenny? I don't think I even
Nothing.
know what you were thinking. Okay. So there you have it. If you want sick bees that don't perform, that suffer for the rest of their lives, and I'm not exaggerating. All right, this is a fact. Pollen stress during larval development has far-reaching physical and behavioral effects on bees. Okay, they die sooner. They can't waggle dance as well. They give all different directions. They forage for maybe a day. Okay, they have their orientation. Who knows all the sublethal things that are happening to those underweight, hungry, non-performing bees. Okay, so that's just the start. Know what starving looks like. All right, no jelly. Simple, because the nurse bees need the protein for the development of their hyperpharyngeal glands to produce the jelly. Okay, so there's royal jelly everybody knows about. There's worker jelly, which people go, oh, what's the difference? And I'll be blowed. All right, it's not as high a sugar content. And there's drone jelly, but they need their hypopharyngeal glands to deliver that. If there isn't that stimulus for them, they can't do it, and they go around, and the larvae are screaming out, feed me, kind of like, I don't know how many people have teenagers, but there's no food, feed me, there's got to be more. And so they deliver proportionately as they can to the way the larvae are behaving. If pollen supply is non-existent, shall we say, if they're not getting the protein they need, they start feeding on their own fat bodies. All right, so the bees themselves become undernourished as they're feeding themselves from their own body fats. And then they will also cannibalize the larvae. And we mentioned about how, if I can use the word intelligent, a bee colony is, they don't start eating with the biggest, fattest larva. They start at the youngest because there's less invested in it. All right, so they'll let the bigger ones, they'll give the food to the bigger ones because, well, they've come this far, keep them going. I'm sidetracking on you. Sorry for the information
Not really.
overload.
Well, no, it's not really sidetracking, because then they would create a break in their brood cycle.
Yes.
By doing that. Yeah.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
then means that role's interrupted and the whole colony's interrupted down the path.
Yes. Well said. Thank you for that. Yes. I'm going to say, look, I'll just put the pictures up and you do the rest, Jenny, because you did a really good job just then. Thank you for being there. Okay, something about what is a supplement. All right, because they're not all the same. Now I've got a very blatant photo up there of a healthy fat bee, and I don't know if you can see, but I've got this also as a video, but there was no sense in that. Those bees, within 30 seconds, I'm talking about within 30 seconds of opening that bucket of custom bee feed, those bees were in there and coming back, and you can actually see that they just get fully dusted, go back, come back for more when they're hungry. And I had one occasion where I was in a training apiary that should have known better, and nobody had been feeding those bees. They didn't know about it, and I came in and did that. And the bees, I think there were 6 colonies, ate 5 kilos in 2 days.
Wow.
All right. Yeah. And people were saying, oh, we've never fed them before. I thought, you should have known better. But anyway, that's not everybody knows, even people who should. All right. You might know some more than somebody else now, for sure. So what you'll get in pretty well all supplements, they'll say they've got vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. All right. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail because I become very quickly, obviously ignorant once you start talking about tryptophan and the like. But I do know and would encourage anyone who's keen, look up the importance of isoleucine. Okay, I've got it underlined there. Look it up. And if you buy a supplement or plan on giving a supplement that does not have that, you are wasting your time. All right, they need that to take in the supplement and process it. Okay.
So isoleucine's an amino acid.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And what makes it so critical?
That's why I'm saying it's underlined, and I'm going to get you to do some homework.
Okay.
All right, because it just gets, I'm just becoming more ignorant if I go too far. And I hate that to be known. All right, I like to fake it. I could talk at length about all of this, Jenny. I'm quite experienced with biotin. I know all about. No, it's not. I can't do it. So here we go. There's information galore everywhere.
Mm.
I'm nearly done with this part. All right. And I hope we're in time because I don't tend to look at clocks out of disrespect for people. Where am I there? Okay. This is revision. Nectar is the primary source of energy in the form of carbohydrates. All right. Pollen is so important. It can't be emphasized enough. It's the protein. It's what makes for the healthy bee from the time they're being fed. And this I neglected to mention is that it's the larvae are only fed for the time that the bee is uncapped. Okay, so there's a 5-day window of for that bee. All right, there's no point waiting till it's capped and thinking, oh, maybe I should have fed them. It's too late. And all those things that we spoke of before, their premature death, their inefficient behaviors, dancing or being coordinated as a team, if you will, gone. So we really need to think about that strategy of keeping them healthy. A lack of nectar means cranky bees. We've said that. A lack of pollen means the colony will not, this isn't may, all right, it's will. If they don't have the food, the colony will decline and rapidly. We're talking kilos, they eat kilos of pollen. Something that I neglected is the preferential eating of pollen is they will eat it fresh. Firstly, they want it fresh. They'll take it in. Then they'll have the 1 day old, maybe 2 days. There's no difference in the quality at that point. It's just their preference is fresh. If you see a frame of pollen as excess stores, or a frame that's got say a bit of a seal over it, they'll put like a little honey seal or something over that, they won't take it from there because basically that's old news. But it is still viable, and I'm not going to go into things because we now move into biosecurity matters, and that's not my purview for this evening. But it doesn't mean you have to throw it away. Let me put it that way. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the bees would still feed on it
if they needed it, yes.
at
Yes.
last preference.
Last resort, yes. Or if it's if it's a good biosecurity thing, but it can be a booster for a nuke. But biosecurity.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yes.
about taking frames out of hives and moving them around.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that's you gotta. I mean, well, no, I don't even want to talk anything about biosecurity at this point in history.
Okay. No. Okay. I can understand why.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I've
I can understand.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here I leave this. I'm pretty close to the end here, folks. So you can, get ready to go. But I can't make anybody feed their bees, and it's not my intention to do that. I'm not telling you have to feed your bees. That's not I don't tell people what to do, mainly because I don't let anybody tell me what to do. Right? We live by choices. We live by the moment. Some people try to live in the past or the future, but right here and now, you've got to decide how healthy are my bees and what can I do to help them? Do I want the proverbial fat bee, or do I want, let's call it decrepit bee? All right.
Yeah.
And that's the question you've got to ask yourself. And it's for your bees. All right. You can buy pollen in the health food store. Why? Because it's good for you. Isn't it? No? I don't know.
Well, is
but
it?
I know that it is
Yeah.
for the bees. I know it is for the bees. And that's that. They need it. So do what you can. Now I have this, if I can do that. Okay, yeah, you can read that. And that's what they're talking about.
Well-fed bees.
Yeah. Okay. So
Hatching. Yeah.
that's the thing. They've got to come out of that cell well. All right. If they don't come out of that cell well, they can't perform. That's it. Pure and simple. And there will be fewer of them over a longer period. And my goodness, if you don't want healthy bees, get out of beekeeping. Thank you. That's all I can say. You shouldn't be there if you're not going to look after the animal. This is animal husbandry. This is livestock. You can call it a pet, but I'm going to break a couple of hearts here. One thing about bees as a pet, you can love them to pieces, but they're never going to love you back. Okay. Just thought I'd mention that. Now, one more slide. This is a bonus. This is for people who need this or want it or want to share it. Okay, but here it is. This is how to contact me. All right, it's got my email address, but it's tips for how to find a queen. All right, that's it. That's just a bonus slide, totally off topic, but hey, I do queens, so why not throw something in there? That's it for me.
Thank you, Kevin. I think how to find a queen is always a good thing to add in, because we had a bee queens program on the weekend, and we went and visited an observation hive, and everyone was looking for the queen. Then when we looked at the hive, we realized it was probably quite deep, and we're only seeing one side of potentially four or five frames deep. So she could have been anywhere, but we had a good look. We couldn't find her.
Yeah.
Not on Saturday. That's okay.
No, probably better on Sunday.
Yeah, should have come back the next day, but that's good. But, thank you for that, Kevin. It was a great presentation. I'd like to open the floor to any questions. I can't quite see everybody, so if you could just perhaps unmute yourself and ask a question. I know I had a question from listening, and also a conversation I had on the weekend, so perhaps I can start. Kevin, I heard recently that autumn feeding your bees is not good for your bees.
Oh.
I've only just recently heard that. So I was a little bit surprised, because we're always told to feed bees in autumn 2-to-1 so that they store. But yes, I was wondering if you'd heard any of that.
Where that may be coming from, Jenny, is the idea that what you don't want to stimulate a colony for the queen to produce more eggs. All right,
that's right.
That's the main consideration. But if we went back, if people didn't harvest as much honey in autumn, you wouldn't need to be, feeding them. Pollen, I want my bees to go in healthy with sufficient stores. It's always about having sufficient stores so that I don't have to think about supplemental feeding. Supplemental feeding that's just it. It's a supplement. It's to assist, to help, okay? And that's it. So I only feed when I have to. And I wouldn't say there's a good time or a bad time. I know that some people are under the impression, or have heard that to have them well fed pollen wise, all right, can be attractive to nosema. All right, because the nosema feeds on the gut. And if you got healthier bees, it could be more attractive to nosema. This is a moot point. And I was speaking with Dr. Jamie Ellis at University of Florida. And he said sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, which shows more about nosema than the feeding. How is that for a workaround?
Yep, thank you. No, that's good. I did have another question, so I'm gonna take the floor while no one else is asking
Yeah,
questions at the
it's a
moment.
case of there's so much info, it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
process.
Oh, it's good. It's really good. You had a slide there that said requeen as necessary.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
could you talk about that in terms of nutrition?
In terms of nutrition, not really,
Mm-hmm.
but requeening as necessary is just based on queen performance, which, oh, all right, yes, okay, I've got it now. If you are raising your own queens and they're undernourished, they'll be poor in their
Yeah.
performance. And they won't have what it takes. I remember I used to argue, oh, there's no difference. Queens are queens, size doesn't really matter. But somebody posited that if the queen is larger, healthier, it stands to reason that she's stronger and can fly better for her nuptial flights. All
Yeah.
right. And will be, if you will, and this is something that's, well, try to keep away from all it, well, I don't know what words to use. If she can fly harder and faster, then she's not going to be hanging around with the losers in the drone congregation area.
Mm.
All right. The duds won't be able to get to. So if you're raising your own queens, it is well worth doing when there's good food around, or making sure there's good food for them. I think that answered it.
It did.
I'm
Thank you
going to
very
write that
much.
down. Yeah.
It was a good answer.
Yay.
Eee.
Everybody's so patient with me. I think you're lovely.
Wow. I think maybe Michael might have a question, but I can't. I think he's muted at the moment.
Does
No,
he? Can he?
no,
Oh,
just
Oh, yep, great.
unmuted.
Great.
What's the best way to keep or feed the bees? Have heaps of honey there for them, or supplement feed them? Because we've got our bees, and only reason I've got them is to pollinate the vegetables and fruit trees. Honey is just a byproduct, I suppose, of that, and a nice byproduct. But if I can keep more honey in the box for the bees, do I need to feed them?
no, you shouldn't. No, I wouldn't think so, because they'll keep a balance. You just where you have to be careful with that, Michael, is that they don't start filling up the brood box with honey when there's a nectar flow or something. You want to keep room in the brood box for the queen to keep laying. And they do get, I think in New South Wales, they call it plugged out. They get plugged up, all right, in the brood box, and that will cause swarming.
Yeah, just keep heaps more frames so they can fill it up.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And the other thing is that they're more likely to process uncapped honey than capped honey, because again, bees are efficient. It's easier if it's more fluid than if they have to add water to reduce it to what's referred to in some scientific communities as the suckability of the insect. Right? How easy is it to process the food?
Yeah, we're down in Hobart, so it is pretty cool. But
Yes.
I was very surprised that I think we've only had 2 days this winter where I haven't seen bees come and go from the hive.
Yes.
Which is, and some days, it's down to 7, 8 degrees, and they're still coming in and out, which I was very surprised.
I've been minding my language the whole time, and then you say 7, 8 degrees. Shame on you.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Mind you, I've put a lot of insulation around the hive
Yes.
to try to keep them warm.
Yes.
So maybe they're coming out, getting a bit of a shock, going for a quick fly and come back again.
Yeah. Well, Fair enough. Well, they have to go out to go to the toilet anyway.
Yes, yeah.
I think we were talking about insulating hives on the weekend and about some of the problems that it might cause down here. I think there's been some research done, Michael, about if you keep your hives warm, too warm, they think it's spring, and so they start eating their stores and they tend to fly a lot more. So you might want to just check your stores on your hive. We'll having a good chat about that on the weekend.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, and the other thing is if they think it's spring, that queen's going to lay more. All right. And if she starts laying more and there aren't the hatched bees to look after that brood, this is not a good situation. That's when you get things like chilled brood and that you don't have enough bees to look after bees. They die.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Who's
Sorry.
this? Who's talking? Carla?
It's
Nikki.
Nikki.
Oh, it's Nikki.
Nikki. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
I've got a question about the fat bee, skinny bee thing, literally. So I'm only in my first season of beekeeping and I caught some swarms and I was told that my bees looked skinny. How much can we judge whether they need feeding based on whether they look skinny coming and going?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that myself. I think if you think they need some feeding, all you have to do, I don't know, I don't think if you look up if you Google honeybee feeders, there's dozens of different kinds. The most efficient for the small numbers, and I do this even with larger numbers just to get an idea, is put a bottle feeder on the outside of the hive, an entrance feeder, okay, with your sugar syrup in it. And if they start taking it, good. If they don't, take it away. Give them a day, all right? And you'll watch, if they're hungry for that carbohydrate, it will almost be as if they inhale it. Okay, so don't go by eye. If you wanted to be really serious, you could weigh them, and that would give you a more accurate. Because if I look at bees at the moment, I couldn't tell you if they're fat or skinny. All right, but if they take syrup, they want it, they need it. The other one is, as I said earlier, watch, and this is for Michael as well, or anybody, have a look at what pollen the bees are bringing in. Okay, look on those pollen baskets as they're landing. You can tell you can visually see the pollen in the pollen basket, but you can get with bees that are collecting nectar what's called landing heavy. All right, and they don't just glide in. They're a little bit slower, they're a little bit tubby, and they land hard. All right.
Pseudo crash landing.
Yeah, it is. It's more of a crash landing because they've got the weight of that nectar in their crop.
And so it's not an issue if they take the nectar and store it. Sorry, take the sugar syrup and store it.
Generally, if you do a 1-to-1 sugar syrup, they don't do anything but consume it or put it to use in some way. When you use the heavier ratios, then they're likely to store, and that's the purpose for that. When there were the terrible droughts and the like, it was almost criminal because commercial beekeepers were being accused of adulterating their honey when all they were doing was keeping their bees alive. All right. However, there are some places in the world that do farm lot feed sugar syrup, and the honey isn't honey, it's sugar syrup. So you would need, if you're feeding sugar syrup to feed the bees, you'd need to keep a record of what and how much you did for your own health purposes, and knowing when you're selling honey that it actually is honey.
Yeah. And at this time of year, if Yeah, I'm hefting my hives, but I don't really have much of a gauge to compare them to,
Sure.
because it is my first season. But they feel okay. But if I am worried, and I want to give them some dry sugar, I'm in southern Tasmania as well,
Yes.
and I want
Oof.
to give them some dry sugar. Obviously, just picking the best, warmest day and literally just getting it into the top of the
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
getting it into the top of the hive without disturbing them. Is that
Yes.
okay? Or
Yeah. Yeah. Just put it like on an ice cream lid or something like that, so it doesn't just spread all over the colony. They can come up
yeah,
and grab it, and
yeah.
that'll just slide under pretty easily. But what you do quickly, I think, is the I can only imagine southern Tasmania, but I'm telling you, I'm gonna get there. I really want to come to Tasmania. So
It's
there.
been balmy, I tell you. Been
Yeah.
way too balmy for
No,
winter.
no, Taswegians are bomb,
Yeah.
isn't that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I'm
Nikki, for
gonna
your
be
question.
barred. He's
Yeah,
not coming here.
exactly. Yeah.
I hear the beer's
Um,
real good. Okay.
it is. And I'm just looking if there are any other questions. I thought I saw Carla wanting to ask a question before, but
I've
I'm
just
just
got
mindful.
Jen, it's Kristen.
Oh, who was that? Was Kristen. Hello, Kristen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. But look, Kevin, this has just been absolutely fascinating. I can't believe how much I've learned in an hour.
Woohoo!
I
Thank
think
you.
my brain's about to explode because I think I have so many questions. We could be here until midnight.
Yes,
I'm not
you
going to ask
can.
any questions. I'm just going to say thank you for all the information, and I'm just going to try and process all that information because
Well,
I'm actually
yeah,
feeling slightly confused now. I just feel like I have so many different
it's
thoughts
too
in my
much.
head about
Yeah.
whether I need to feed or not, and I'm trying not to panic about
Well,
my.
Don't panic.
No,
don't
because
panic.
like Michael, we've had and as Nikki said, it's been so warm down here. My bees have been out nearly every day. It's only been when we've had a few really cold days or when it's been wet, and even in between showers, they've been out.
Mm.
And I've seen them bringing pollen in, and I've tried like Nikki to heft, but I really don't know. I've got 4 hives at the moment. They're all different sizes. One I never got around to wintering down. I just the weather just changed and I didn't get back to it in time. So it's just been too cold. So I don't know whether my bees need feeding, but I will go out and watch them again and see what pollen they're bringing in. That's a really good idea. And I've never really heard about these feeders to put outside, but that's much better, I think. Because like you, Kevin, when I first started doing this a few years ago, I didn't look after my bees very well because I had no idea what I was doing. So I got sugar syrup in, but it was too late. And I had no idea about the volumes either. Like, I reckon I was putting 200 mils in, not
No,
2
right. Yes,
liters. So it wasn't enough. So they died, unfortunately, over winter.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that I still know enough yet. But it's been extremely
No, but hey,
so I
be
do know
kind
what's
to
more
yourself.
now.
None of us knows all that can be known, and that's why I skip over amino acids, because be good at what you're good at and just keep learning.
Yeah.
And I think there's always, it's driving me crazy if you want the truth, because I think, oh, I got an idea, and I go, no, I don't. I haven't got a clue. I'm just doing the best I can.
Yeah, and I think that's all any of us can do. And like you said earlier on, the bees actually know what they're doing.
Yes.
They've got it under control, and hopefully, if we haven't done anything too bad to them by taking too much
they're
off,
very
they'll
resilient.
survive.
Goodness.
Yeah.
They're very resilient, very, I wouldn't use the word forgiving, but they don't care what they live in. And people argue about what type of box, I mean, what's the point? Sorry.
No, it's a good point. Okay. Are there any other questions? I'm just mindful of the time. We've had a very generous amount of time of your time tonight, Kevin. So
no, it's
been fabulous. And we're going to have to get you back to we'll get you to Tasmania. Here I'm saying back to Tasmania, but get you here. And hopefully this time you can fly.
Please. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, Jenny, you were very, I know everybody's hanging out to go and have their a pair of teeth very late. But one thing you sent me was what advice I have for a new beekeeper.
Yes,
All right?
please give that
there's
advice.
a couple of things I really want to say here. All right.
Yep. Great.
And that is, and I know it's going to send shivers through a lot of people, get rid of gloves as soon as you can. All right. Get rid of gloves as soon as you can. They're a nuisance. They kill bees. They get you more stings. They're hard to clean. So when you go back to the colony with your gloves full of, pheromones that say sting here, that's going to happen. You become a much, was again, Jamie Ellis, University of Florida, said, you become a much better beekeeper the day you stop wearing gloves. All right. Now that's your choice, but please take some of that on board. Now, this makes me think of stings. And this is the other thing that not many people are aware of that I would like to say. And this came to me straight from a biochemist who did their PhD in nutrition of honeybees. All right. The best thing to do when you're stung by a bee is to, of course, we all know, scrape it out. Don't pinch and pull. All right. Scrape it out, but then use heat to treat the sting where you were stung. Use as much heat as you can tolerate. Don't scald yourself. Don't give yourself burns, but heat dissipates it, breaks down the proteins of the sting. All right. So don't bother using honey or cold water or ice. I had somebody say, oh, toothpaste works for me. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, use it in your mouth then. And then, oops. And that's that. All right. I just want those things. Get rid of gloves. It's a bold move, especially if you've been, kind of dependent on them. But it's better for the bees. It's better for your bees. Thank you for tolerating my comment.
Thank you, Kevin, for that. And thank you for sharing that fabulous presentation. I know that I've learned a lot tonight as well. And it will certainly have an impact on how I share information in the future as well, Kevin. So thank you for that. And we really look forward to having you down here in Tasmania sometime in the near future.
Woohoo.
I'll have to get organising and looking at how we can make this happen. Because you're a cornucopia of knowledge, and we very much appreciate your time this evening.
Cornucopia and corny at the same time. What more can you?
All of it together.
Yeah. Hey, this has been real fun. It's a privilege for me, and I think it's great that you've recorded it because people can go back and review it, and where there's been information overload, you can just take bites out and work with
absolutely
that. And my email is there, so this is a risky thing. If you think I can help via an email, I usually answer them.
That's scary, but thank you.
I said
we
usually, usually. And of course, if you ask Jenny first, then she can pass it on to me. Woo!
Well, what I might do, Kevin, is I might actually include your email address in our next workshop for the women, so they can reach out to you directly as well.
Cool. Okay.
Great.
All good.
Wonderful. I'm going to turn the recording off.
Okay.